Okay, so let's begin. So this afternoon, we're going to begin talking about the normative ethics. No, so this is the fourth, I think, module. No, in Ethics One, and in this module, we'd like to ask the question: what are the basis for a rational deliberation of ethical, moral dilemmas? No, in module 3, if you recall, we said that it is important that we all go through a rational attempt at making decisions when it comes to our moral life. We have also learned that our values certainly affect the way that we, you might say, go through these moral dilemmas. But values should only be considered if and when they are facilitative of the common good, which is the goal of any moral decision making. No? We have seen from Module 3 that some values are aesthetic, and as such, they lead us directly to the attainment of eudaimonia, which is the common good. However, moral decisions are oftentimes mediated by values that are first facilitative of the common good, no, for a community, no, for your social group, that will enable an individual members such as yourself to attain your individual eudaimonia. Okay, today I'd like to start you off with the first theory of normative ethics, and this is none other than utilitarianism. So this is Jeremy Bentham, class. And Jeremy Bentham is the first philosopher who talked about utilitarianism. For Jeremy Bentham, no, one can actually make a computation, no, of pleasures and pains. As such, no, he introduced a formula by which we can measure whether a decision will yield more pleasure or pain. No, it is not important at this point to discuss what the formula is or how to go about this. No, I have indicated in your module some of the criteria, no, that Jeremy Bentham used, no, such as frequency of pleasure, duration, intensity. Now, for Jeremy Bentham, you need to consider all of these factors in order to know when your moral decision is actually the best decision. Itong picture na to ni Jeremy Bentham was taken from the University College London in London, no, which I visited uh, a few months before the pandemic lockdown. No, pero ngayon, hindi na ganyan. No? Nilipat na si Jeremy Bentham sa isang glass enclosure at nilipat siya sa ground floor na cafeteria ng UCL. Jeremy Bentham, no, ito, nice to know trivia lang. Jeremy Bentham particularly requested before dying, no, that his remains be preserved in this manner, no, para daw palagi pa rin siyang makaka-attend ng meeting ng utilitarian team or group, no. Akala niya it will remain forever. Pero tingnan niyo yung problem with Jeremy Bentham, ha? Here is an example, no. So this is an example of you might say a case, no, that is very interesting, no, exemplifying the problem with utilitarianism. In 1884, no, this is true to life, class, huh? 4 English sailors in South Atlantic, no, I forgot their names, but 4 English sailors in South Atlantic went out, no, to explore. Tandaan nyo, it was a time of exploration, no, 1884, no. 19th century was really a time for Europeans to explore the world, including, as you might know, Spain, who explored and really used, no, the resources of this country. So ganun din to. No, there were 4 sailors, including one who is an orphan. No, the name is that I remember, Parker, who was 17 at that time, and something happened while they were trying to explore this particular region of the ocean. The ship capsized, and the 4 sailors were able to save themselves through the, ano bang tawag dyan? Usually the parang escape boat, no, of the ship. But after several days, of course, they had to face the unavoidable question: how do they go about existing, living, surviving without anyone trying to rescue them? So they had to make the quick decision. Are they going to kill one of themselves and eat that one person just so the remaining three will survive? No, and to make the long story short, that the three senior sailors decided that it should be Parker, no, who has to sacrifice for everyone, because yun nga, Parker is an orphan, he does not have any family. Parker is the newest, he's the youngest, he doesn't have to to go home kasi wala namang maghintay sa kanya, unlike the senior sailors. And guess what they did? No, they actually killed Parker, no, and consumed him just so they'd survive. No, yun yung karumal-dumal na nangyari kay Parker. Now, using Benthamite utilitarianism, it may be argued that using the criteria set forth by Bentham, more people will be happy, no, with the decision. Tatlong tao yung nag-survive compared to only one, no, si Parker. Kaya lang, are we comfortable with that kind of decision making? Ah, kayo ba? Are you comfortable with that kind of decision making? You just kill someone just so you will survive. Another example would be this. Daniel's lion den example. Remember that in the Bible, Daniel was precisely thrown into a lion's den, no, for entertainment purposes. You know that in the Roman times, no, the time of the Roman Empire, uh, it was something normal and commonplace to find the slaves being thrown into the lion den, just so the spectators will be entertained. No, so when you think about it, is it okay to sacrifice one person for the entertainment of 100 more human beings? Now, if you use Benthamite utilitarianism, obviously, you may be swayed to agree that it's okay. But there are issues, no, with Bentham's utilitarianism. Number one, there is no more regard for individual rights. No, wala ka ng karapatan, Parker. No, it's no longer important that you survive, because at the end of the day, we have to make a decision and we have to weigh the satisfaction and happiness and the number of people who will obtain happiness by having you killed. No? Common currency of value. Each of our happiness is one and the same. No? So not one of our happiness is more important than someone else's. And as such, we can easily convert and compute happiness. But is it true? No, that our happiness and worth are similar across people? No, yan yung mga tanong kay Bentham. And so eventually, the son of Bentham's friend and associate, the name is of course John Stuart Mill, no, the one whom you read, reformulated utilitarianism, no, to put more premium on quality rather than quantity. So according to John Stuart Mill, utilitarianism is the principle by which actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness, and wrong as they tend to produce the reverse of happiness. No, this is a rather amusing example, although I find it a little sexist. No, ang tawag dun sa comic na to online ay utilitarian uterus, kasi nga the uterus has produced a lot of offsprings, a lot of products. No? Ngayon, utilitarianism has consistently been used in solving so many case studies. For example, at the outset of the COVID-19 pandemic, one good case study would be the healthcare workers. If you remember, there was a dilemma. No, should healthcare workers sacrifice themselves, no, for the sake of duty? Or should they choose self-preservation? How would a utilitarian solve this? Magandang pag-usapan. Di ba? Magandang pag-isipan. But today, I'd like us to take a look at, kasi oftentimes we think that utilitarianism is a very practical and very useful ethical theory. And so I'd like us to talk about some of the criticisms against the theory, so that when you think about the theory and you employ the theory eventually when we do the case studies, you bear in mind these limitations of utilitarianism. Okay? First one, and the first criticism concerns its affinity with pleasure alone. What does it mean? That we are compared to swines. That human beings are in effect just like swines. No? That all we need and all we want is pleasure. No? But the question of the critics of utilitarianism is quite simple. Ganun ba tayong mga tao? Is all we care about pleasure? Is all we care about base pleasure? Happy ka na ba pag may kinakain ka? Just like in our activity earlier, happy ka na ba kapag you're able to sleep for 8 hours? Or you're able to have fun from time to time, no? Drink and have fun from time to time. So is this all that matters to us? And is this all that what we learned in the module 3, eudaimonia? Is this all eudaimonia amounts to? Okay? Meron ka na bang fulfilled existence because of this base pleasure? Secondly, according to utilitarians, happiness may be unattainable because it concerns not just the self, but that of all people concerned. Ano ibig sabihin? According to the critics of utilitarianism is too concerned with attaining happiness. But the problem is, it's not attainable at all. Because when you think of happiness, when you think of happiness in utilitarianism, you want the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people, and that means you have to satisfy everybody. How can you do that? No? Napakahirap, hindi ba? Halimbawa, kaming mga faculty, even the best among us, no? Pag lumalabas ng evaluation, walang nakaka-perfect. Buti pa nga ang undergrad, ang estudyante, nabibigyan namin ng uno. But for student evaluation of teachers, kasi usually, hindi yun nilalagay lahat outstanding. Ilagay nyo kasi outstanding. Kasi kapag ilalagay nyo lang yung very satisfactory, ibig sabihin, hindi perfect yun. So, halimbawa ako palaging 1.2, kasi nga, syempre, may isa na magsusulat ng very satisfactory lang, hindi outstanding. Kaya lang, numerically, that means hindi perfect. So, yun yung, in effect, yun yung sinasabi ng utilitarianism eh. No, it's unattainable. I don't think that any UP faculty has attained a perfect SAT score. Kasi even when I was in Diliman, nagkaroon ng botohan eh. Yung top 100 professors in UP Diliman, I was one of the top 100. Pero I know the person who was among the top 10. Alam mo, hindi rin perfect na 1.0 ang SAT. No? So ang hirap. Ganun yung sinasabi ng utilitarianism. It is unattainable. To make everybody happy. Para estudyante mo, no? Lahat ng estudyante mo maliban sa isa hindi happy, binigyan ka lang ng very satisfactory dun sa isang item, o edi hindi na perfect. Nakukuha nyo, class? Do you get it? Kung bakit mahirap yung perfect na utilitarianism? Okay, number 3. Sabi ni Bentham, John Stewart rather, the standard is too high. No, because you have to renounce your own happiness for the inducement of promoting the general interest of society. No, if you want your society to be truly happy, the problem is sometimes you have to be ready to also serve the happiness of others, even to the detriment of your own happiness. So according to the critics of utilitarianism, ang hirap naman nun. Because when you want to think of the good for everybody, that would sometimes amount to the supreme sacrifice, no, of giving up your own happiness, no. And sometimes, when you think about it, is it your duty not to make everybody happy? We were just talking about the elections earlier. No, is it our responsibility really not to all our fellow Filipinos, not to help them in times of need, even if we know that this particular Filipino contributed to his own or her own destruction by voting someone who will obviously degrade, no, the life of Filipinos, di ba? Is it our responsibility? Yun yung tanong. Okay? O, number 4, the objection that utilitarianism renders people cold and unsympathizing, making them regard only the consequences of actions, not taking into account the qualities from which those actions emanate. You know, because utilitarianism is only after the effects, the consequences. Now, sometimes it disregards situations where human beings act in good spirit, but as a matter of fact, fails to yield good results. No? Para sa utilitarianism, okay, you did your best. No? Remember that song, I did my best, but my best wasn't good enough. No? So even if you did your best, if your best did not yield happiness of the greatest many, it doesn't have any moral laudability, as it were. Number 5, utility has been stigmatized as an immoral doctrine by giving it the name of expediency, to contrast with principle. No, ang ibig lang sabihin dito ni John Stuart Mill, ng kalaban ni John Stuart Mill, that for utilitarianism, all it matters is expediency. What is practical? What is good for the people? Not principles. No, may sagot si John Stuart Mill dyan. Actually, sabi ni John Stuart Mill, no, we also value principles. No, kaya lang, hindi naman, expedient is not necessarily opposed to what is principled. No, according to John Stuart Mill, halimbawa, truth and lying. No, so if you have a principle, no, for example, truth, you hold it dear, it's important. Well, it can be that this truth might also yield into what is expedient. So it's not the case that the expedient is always opposite the principle. Okay? Number 6, 7 lang naman to class, no? So sakto lang tayo sa oras. Number 6, there is not time previous to action for calculating and weighing the effects of any line of conduct on the general happiness. So according to the critics of utilitarianism seems to assume that we know what to do all the time. But in truth, when we are faced with a moral dilemma, there is no time, no, previous to that dilemma, no, that is given to us so that we can actually calculate and weigh the effects of our actions correctly. No, for example, you're already in an examination room. No, when you are tempted to cheat, no, you don't have enough time to deliberate and really think what is good for the greatest number of people. No, you just have to sometimes make that quick decision. Will I cheat or I won't? Hindi sapat yung oras, according to the critics of John Stuart Mill. Okay? Number 7, and this is the last, the claim that a utilitarian will be apt to make his own particular case an exception to moral rules, and when under temptation will see a utility in the breach rather than the observance of a rule. According to the critics of utilitarianism, the problem with utilitarianism is that it is always prone to doing what it feels is right, even if that action may be deemed an exception to moral rules. So, for example, talking about truth earlier, now a utilitarian might be forced, just like the example I told you earlier about lying to people just so they will vote for your chosen candidate, hindi ba? In the name of the good choice, sometimes you might need to lie to some people, but for utilitarians, okay lang yun. But according to the critics, that's the problem with you. See, you make an exception when you feel like the exception uh, lives up not to your notion of what the ideal consequence might be. So problematic because according to the critics, see, you're not principled, no? Unlike what you claim. So lahat ng yan, class, John Stuart Mill ended with a chapter on what sort of proof the principle of utility is susceptible. People have been asking him at that time, especially, John Stuart Mill, what is your proof that happiness is desirable and the only thing desirable? And according to John Stuart Mill, kasi ganito yan, no, think about it. No, is there anything else that is desirable in and of itself except for happiness? No? All other things, including virtue, we want to be good people because we want to be happy. No? There is no other proof necessary. No? And quoting John Stuart Mill, John Stuart Mill says, if you ask him what sort of proof is necessary, no, to defend the principle of utility, sabi ni John Stuart Mill, if human nature is so constituted as to desire nothing which is not either a part of happiness or a means of happiness, we can have no other proof. And we require no other. That these are the only things desirable. No? What does this mean? That for John Stuart Mill, at the end of the day, there is nothing else more obvious, more palpable than that, but the fact that we are all for happiness. We all want to be happy. No? And this is consistent with what we learned from chapter 3. No? I mean, from module 3. No, that really the value, the overriding value of the moral life is the attempt to gain eudaimonia. What John Stuart Mill tells us, no, and the utilitarians, no, what they try to tell us is that ultimately, eudaimonia is attainable if our daily, everyday decisions, moral decisions, are geared towards the attainment of eudaimonia. So yun ang kwento, hindi man kwento, but that is what utilitarianism is.